Hello, this is Bryant Myers, and welcome to another episode of Debunking Flat Earth. I'm really excited about this video because I'm going to show you a lot of positive evidence that the Vikram lander from the Chandrayaan 3 actually did land on the moon, debunking David Weiss and most flat earthers that are claiming that it's fake. In fact, all they have is the word fake. They don't have any evidence that it was faked or anything, really. And what kind of motivated this video is David Weiss and I have been going back and forth via email because we have kept things friendly. And basically I said to him like about a week ago, Dave, why are you showing all these videos with the Vikram lander being a cartoon and saying that it's fake when no one had any intention of that being the real lander? No one claimed it to be. And, you know, there's been all these flat earth memes that have been going around. So he responds to me, you can see here, basically in a nutshell, of course we don't think that it's supposed to be a real video. Okay, and then interestingly, after he emails me this, then he updates his own video, which has this whole cartoon on the moon theme, and basically says the same thing. And it's funny though, he pins this comment right after his email to me, and it's 3 days after he releases the video. So why didn't he say this in the first place? Why all of a sudden 3 days later is he now just kind of confessing that of course we don't think this was real footage? Well, unfortunately, we're going to see that flat earthers did not get his memo. Like, for example, my friend Patrick Tamponi posted this video, which I talked about in my last video. And, you know, basically all these flat earthers are sharing these memes as if the ISRO intentionally was trying to make this to be the actual lander. And of course, this is the whole theme of my last video, so I won't get into that again. You can watch my last video. But after Patrick posted this, my comment was actually by far his most popular comment. And what it was a lot of people from India basically, you know, supporting me. So again, people in the flat earth community did not get DITRH's memo. And it was based on, again, he actually didn't get his own memo. He had two videos essentially making fun of the moon landing. The first one was basically showing actual footage of the Chandrayaan 3 approaching the moon. And he just said it's basically anybody that believes this, like this is what he said here, if you can't see how fake this is, I can't help you. But no evidence that it's fake, just simply words. And his cartoon on the moon one was the one that he's basically had to do a pinned comment to point out that it wasn't meant to be a real image, even though in the video, he is basically saying this is real, this is cartoon. So he's just kind of contradicting himself. And again, flat earthers didn't get the memo. These memes have just been constantly just pouring and spamming, you know, social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. But here's something I want to share with you. Even though DITRH himself says that these were not meant to be real images and that he understands that, listen to him talking to a high school summer school. This is Greenwich, which is kind of disturbing that he's teaching a class at a actual high school. But just listen to him here because evidently he did not get his own memo.
This is the Indian moon landing. There's the head of India. This is the actual footage from the Indian moon landing. That's the footage. This is the footage. This is the footage. It's not landed yet. Give it a second. It's gonna land.
I think that's a video game.
You know, it'll look like that 1970 video game and everyone's clapping. Dude, it's not believable.
So he's contradicting himself. In this video, you just heard him say this is the actual footage, where in the pinned comment of his YouTube channel, he's saying, of course, we don't think this is real footage. So which is it, DITRH? Is it actual footage or not? Of course, again, this is typical flat earth deception and lies. So when he talks about the landing, he's telling people as if this was supposed to be the real image. But then when I email him and he posts a comment, he says it's not supposed to be, that we know that it's not the real image. And interestingly, that pinned comment only had, last I looked, like 15 likes. And I don't think a lot of flat earthers were even reading it because they're still sharing memes as if this was supposed to be the real lander when it never was. So just today, Sunday, he releases this video and saying that I'm back, which I am back. It's always a compliment when I see top flat earthers highlight me in a video. So this video, he emails me this morning and says, Brian, I did this video just for you, basically, again, trying to convince me that the landing was faked. And then I go through the video and it's just, there's absolutely no evidence that it was faked. All he has is just basically just saying it's fake And then he does this whole shifting of the burden of proof on me. So in the video, he says, where is the evidence it's fake? This is called the burden of proof reversal fallacy. Actually, it's the shifting of the burden of proof fallacy. And what DITRH does not understand is that it can also lie with a person denying a well-established fact or theory. So this means that the burden of proof, if there's a well-established fact or theory, which landing on the moon is that case, actually the burden of proof is not. This is not a shifting of the burden of proof fallacy, because this is the established, accepted truth. So the burden of proof is on you, DITRH, to show that this is fake, and you have done nothing of the sort. Not one shred of evidence that it's fake, except for these ridiculous, I think I found my missing AC unit. So how is this proof? You're just finding something that looks like the lander and saying, look, they could do anything to fake it. But when you actually do photoforensics, that's what you need to do. And again, flat earthers don't know how to do photoforensics because they purposely get the low-resolution JPEG files to show artifacts. So you can't even trust when they try to do photoforensics. And in reality, you need to get a court-ordained or actually person that's trained in photoforensics for it to be credible. Because there's more than just the photo. You got to look at the source's reputation, the ISRO, the Indian Space Agency. They've got a great reputation. They have no track record of deceiving the public. You look at the metadata, you look at the actual photoforensics of the for example, the air level analysis, and you can do all kinds of different things with exposure, and there's many different tests, okay? And plausibility, what reason do they have to fake the landing? Again, this is not NASA anymore, so they can't cry NASA. And so, if a flat earther, because I can see it coming, flat earthers are going to try to take these photos and put them in photoforensics. But if you're going to do that, you've got to realize that they're not photoforensics experts, and they're probably using low resolution. Ask them where they got their photo. Are they getting it from the high resolution files from ISRO, which you can get? I'll show you a link here at the end. Or are they downloading low resolution JPEG and basically saying, look at these artifacts, when they're just artifacts from data compression? So I did just, and then in that video, I'm going to go over this in another video where I'm going to debunk DITRH's video about me. But he's basically saying, he's like making fun. He's like, look, Brian, I captured the Indian lander orbiting the moon with my P1000. Can you prove this is fake? And if you watch this video, you see this like little lander, which is clearly a fake thing. But actually, yes, I can prove it's fake, DITRH, because there's no way a P1000 is going to magnify an image that far in space, because the Vikram lander was released in low lunar orbit. And I have images from like a Polish astronomer that's using a deep space telescope to track the Chandrayaan 3, the whole Chandrayaan 3 craft, not just the lander. And it was just a one little pixel dot. So a P1000, you'd be lucky to get one pixel, probably not at all. So yeah, I can prove that this is fake because there's no way that a P1000 is going to capture this lander anyway. So as always, flat earthers just debunking themselves. And this just made me chuckle because it's like, you do realize that a P1000 can't capture this anyway. So, and I did a little error analysis, and actually when you do an ELA test on it, it kind of sticks out. So there's not a consistent error analysis. And so just kind of piecing together some of the evidence, 10,000 people actually showed up for the launch. So right off the bat, there are 10,000 people to witness that this rocket actually did take off. And again, nobody witnessed it go into the ocean. A lot of flat earthers say these rockets, they go up and then they just come down and just go right into the ocean. The whole thing is faked, right? No evidence of that happening. So I'm going to put a link here below where you can look at all the Chandrayaan images and videos. So I'm going to go through a few of them, but you can see this for yourself. And if you actually download these, you can save them as like a web page. And I was able to convert them to .tiff files, high resolution. So this footage was the result to undo the blending from the original video. Now this video is at 120 playback speed. In reality, it took about 66 minutes. Now this sequence footage came from camera 4 of the lunar surface as the spacecraft comes down and approaches for landing. Now what's interesting here, when it starts to descend, you're going to see it kind of stop and change directions and hover. And what this is doing is the Vikram is changing its orientation so the solar panels can be lined up with the sun. So very precise landing. I mean, give India credit. And you can see the flash of the thrusters here at the end. So on August 30th, we do finally get an image from the rover, the navigation cam on the rover of the Vikram lander. And DITRH was asking me for, before this, actual images, and I'm like, here you go, DITRH. So that's why you can see he does a whole rebuttal video. A couple things to point out here is I did a little quick photo forensics. I'm going to do some more later, and it came out pretty clean. The reason it's low resolution is this is coming from the navigation camera on the rover. And again, the purpose of this mission was never meant to be for taking pictures. And we're going to go through some of the mission objectives here in a second. But we did get actual images from the rover. These are real images. And just crying fake is not evidence that they're fake. You can see the rover here. I don't know why flat earthers think this looks fake. It looks very real to me. I don't see any evidence anywhere of these being fake. And again, the goal of the mission is research, not pictures. So let's kind of go through a sample of some of the tests. There were tests taken directly from the Vikram lander with the Chase and the ELSA, for example. And then there were some tests taken from the rover. So now let's look at some of the rover tests. And I think my hunch is that that DITRH is objecting to this mission not because the moon landing was fake, but because they actually did spectroscopy without a container. And not just one spectroscopy, but two. So it turns out that the moon rover was equipped with both an alpha particle X-ray spectrometer and a laser-induced breakdown spectrograph. So I want to show you this little animation here because this was part of the objective of the mission. It was to get a good sample of the elements on the moon's surface. One of the things they were looking for was hydrogen for fuel purposes. The first test was using an alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, which, as you can see here, was basically probing for the elements. And again, that's what spectrometers do. And the second was a laser-induced breakdown spectroscope. And this is a high-powered laser to determine the composition of materials. And again, you can see here some of the elements, iron, aluminum, titanium. Sulfur was kind of a bit of a surprise, how much sulfur there was. That was one of the surprises. Chromium, calcium, and others. And most of them were not surprises, but the sulfur was a little bit of a surprise. Didn't seem like they found much hydrogen, but so I just want to play this here because to me it's just kind of funny.
Spectroscopy needs to be in a container. Otherwise, you don't know.
Spectroscopy needs to be in a container. The study of how light interacts with matter needs to be in a container.
So to me, that was just funny because this mission actually had not one, but two examples of spectroscopy without a container. So the mission looks like yesterday, the mission is things are shut down in sleep mode for now, as of yesterday. And they're looking to see if everything will reawaken back on September 22nd, which is the next sunrise. Now, and there was kind of a last-minute test that was conclusive. Sources also say that both the lander and the rover confirm that daylight does indeed come from the sun on the lunar surface.
You have daylight. Daylight is the illumination of the sky. It's not the sun.
From the sun.
No, the sun.
You're saying that daylight is not from the sun?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just can't resist playing that. So now let's get into some more evidence. This is not NASA or not even ISRO. This is an independent Polish astronomer that actually was able to chart the Chandrayaan 3 in deep space. And the trajectory data came from Scott Tilley and others, and it was exactly where it was supposed to be. So again, the Indian Space Agency, they released the data for the planned orbits, and this mission, supposedly based on independent astronomers or amateur astronomers, it seemed to be a very clean mission where things kind of went as planned. And so this is not a coincidence. This is about exactly where the Chandrayaan was supposed to be, and indeed they found it there. Again, great evidence. Okay, so I want to get into some added really powerful evidence. And the first is the landing spot. So as you saw in that earlier landing video, if you look at the craters at the very end, what you find is that the craters kind of match this pattern. And this guy on Twitter here kind of posted this and said, look, this is where it's landing. And he came up with a little map of roughly where it would be. Now, I turned this kind of sideways a little bit so that it would match up with the craters. And when you compare it to the actual image, this is from the Chandrayaan 2, which is a very high resolution image. You can see a before and after where you have nothing here. And then between, this is where the Vikram lander lands in between this 8-hour window. Now you can see the Vikram lander. Very conclusive evidence. And it actually falls right here, which is right within the window. And again, he posted this before this image, so you can see that the images from the landing camera match the images from the Chandrayaan-2 satellite, low-orbiting satellite. Great confirmation that the Vikram was right there. And here you can see the path of the Vikram over the course of its missions, about 100 meters it went out. But this has been confirmed as the location of the lander, and it's right here on the moon. They call it Shiv Shakti, I think after the Prime Minister named this landing site. So again, the furthest south landing ever. So congratulations, India, for landing on the moon. Just overwhelming evidence. So my favorite evidence comes from Scott Tilley and some other amateur astronomers. And what they were able to do, just like this also happened with the Apollo missions, I found out, and also with Artemis, is that you can track these signals in deep space and confirm they're coming from deep space. So let's just read. I want to read what Astronomy Live posted on my last video. I think it's worth highlighting the fact that Scott Tilley and others have been detecting the radio transmissions from Vikram on the surface after the landing. If the mission was a hoax, it would beg the question, why is there now something transmitting from the surface of the moon at the location and frequency expected? He can also hear clearly the transmissions of the ground station to the lander, reflecting off the moon itself and back to the receiver, showing that two-way communication is happening. So anybody that understands radio transmissions can get this. Now, flat earthers don't understand science typically, so they're just going to basically be in denial and bury their head in the sand. But the reality is the Vikram lander has published two different transmitters, 2241.6 and 2268 megahertz. And you can see right here one and then the other transmitter. Now, I want to play this little bit here because this is one of the frequencies, the 2268. And listen to the beautiful sound here. Okay, isn't that very soothing? Just a wonderful sound. And other, you can see Von Storch Engineering, and there's many other amateur astronomers that were able to pick up the signal from the Chandrayaan-3 lander. Again, confirming it's on the moon. So you say, okay, so what? They're picking up a signal at that frequency. What's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. This is where it's kind of the nail in the coffin on flat Earth here. Because you can, now what Scott Tilley did is you can record this signal and actually record the Doppler data. So with Doppler, you can actually, there's a relationship between frequency and speed. So as you may know from red shifting and blue shifting, but more commonly like in a siren going past you, as things move away from you, they're going to be, the frequency is going to get lower. You're going to have a lower frequency or a red shift with light. If the sirens are moving towards you, you hear the higher pitch. And there's very, accurate equations that map all this out. So Scott was able to make a Doppler curve based on recording the Doppler data. And again, for people like him that understand this, and by the way, on his website, he shows how anybody can do this for themselves. And what he did, and this is just so amazing, is he took the data from the moon, the Doppler, because the moon itself is moving relative to where he's at. And because the Vikram lander is on the moon, you can confirm that the Doppler data from the moon is the same as what he's measuring in these signals. Okay, try to take this in. I'm gonna put this in my. I want you to read this. I'm gonna put it in my description of the video, because once you really get this, this is undeniable proof that the Vikram landed on the moon, because the signal can be measured and its Doppler shift can be recorded. And here's the Doppler data. Okay. So when Scott recorded his Doppler data, and these little breaks are only because he had some big trees, but the key is the overall trend here. Here's the Doppler data from the moon, which you can get from JPL Horizons, which will allow you to look at the trajectories of all the planets and all kinds of wonderful stuff. So the velocity of the moon relative to where Scott was well known. He could actually get those exact numbers and create the Doppler data from that. And so what he found was when he measured the signal himself, it perfectly matched the Doppler data from the moon. The only way this is possible is if the Vikram lander is on the moon. You're not going to just by coincidence get the same Doppler data, because the moon is moving in a very precise way at a very precise velocity based on its orbit and the rotation of the Earth and his location on the Earth. All that came perfectly in alignment from him measuring the signal on the moon. So if you can really grasp this, this is undeniable evidence that the landing happened. It's actual proof. In fact, look at Scott. If you can go, by the way, you can go to his Twitter account at Coastal8049 and see all of this for yourself. And go to his blog because he explains it in more detail, because he did this also with the Artemis. And Scott, I love what he says here, because somebody was kind of contesting it a little bit. He says, I'm stating a fact so no one else can doubt, because it's something that anyone with the gear can see for themselves. So on his website, he gives actually directions and the equipment that he used to do this, so people can see for themselves. You don't have to just believe him blindly. You can do this experiment and see for yourself. And by the way, I didn't realize this, but there were amateur ham radio people that did the same type of thing with Apollo and confirmed that the Apollo was on the moon, comparing it to the data. So this was done with Artemis as well. So that's a lot of evidence. Okay, so Dirth, I really eagerly await your reply to this. So now all that Dirth has is it's fake. That's all he just says. It's fake. I haven't heard from him one shred of evidence yet. So let's kind of go through a summary. If this was, say, a court of law, and you were going to look at my evidence versus Dirth's. Okay, so number one, I present that the ISRO has no track record of deception. In fact, they just launched another probe to the sun, and people witnessed that launch. So again, what's their motive? There's no motive for them to commit this crime. Or it's not really a crime, but deception. Number two, 10,000 people witnessed the launch, and 0 people saw the rocket go into the ocean. There's no evidence that the rocket just went into the ocean like flat earthers say happens to all rockets. Okay, there's detailed videos of the Chandrayaan 3 approaching the moon. Again, no evidence that those were faked. There's confirmation of Vikram from Chandrayaan 2 that matches the footage from the landing video. So they could actually see from the low lunar orbit Chandrayaan 2 satellite a very clear image of the Vikram lander showing up, where before, 8 hours before, it was not there. Where is that coming from? Are they just faking that too? Again, there's no evidence that that was faked. So we had real images of the rover and the moon surface from the Vikram lander. So the Vikram lander had a camera. And we also had some images from the navigation camera on the rover, as well as, of course, the images of the Chandrayaan 3 approaching the moon. Now, many tests were performed. I showed you like 4 or 5 of those tests, and the data came back, very detailed analysis, so they're just all making all that up too. It's just ridiculous. But again, my favorite piece of evidence was that the signals can be actually detected at the frequencies that they listed coming from the location that they set on the moon. So how else could these signals be coming from the moon? The moon just doesn't emit radio frequencies of those known megahertz frequencies that the Vikram lander had on board. But to me, my favorite is the Doppler evidence from Scott, Tilley, and others to show that the Vikram lander itself, its transmission signals matches the Doppler of the moon itself. So the only way that can happen is if the Vikram is on the moon. And again, if you really understand that, you'll see that that's definitive proof that it landed, or at least overwhelming evidence. And on the contrary, no flat earther has shown one shred of evidence that the landing was fake. I'm still waiting. We saw that Dirth exposed himself by contradicting himself, where he says he knows that that wasn't meant to be the actual landing with that cartoon. But then when he's talking to high school students in summer school in Greenwich High School, he says that this is the landing, it's actual footage. So he's just contradicting himself. And the mission showed with 2 different forms that spectroscopy absolutely does not need a container. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do like and subscribe. I do have another one coming soon to specifically address the video that Dirth did kind of targeting me, where he says he's back. I'm going to go through a little more photo forensics kind of analysis of that and a really good debunk of a couple of his points. So thanks again for watching. Have a great rest of your day.